Today we are going to take a look at combining like terms. So when you are combining like terms, it's important for you to have a few vocab words that you know. So first of all, a term is either a number by itself, a variable all by itself, such as just X or just Y, or the product of a number and one or more variables. So 6x squared, this is a term. 5xy, this is a term. On these first three terms, you're going to notice that you have a number that comes before the variable. Those numbers are called the coefficient of the term. And then in some cases, we will have a term that does not have a variable at all. And in that case, that's called a constant term. So in your notebook, I would suggest that you pause this here and write down these three definitions so that you know these words. We will use these throughout the course of the rest of the year. So when we are talking, we have to be able to use and understand the vocab. So in order for us to combine like terms, we first of all have to know what terms are like terms and which ones are not. We will only be able to add and subtract terms that are considered like terms. For terms to be like terms, they have to have the exact same variable or variables if they have more than one. So you have two lists on your screen right now. In the left side list, you see some examples of pairings that are like terms. So for example, 3x and negative 2x are like terms because both of them have a variable of x. But if we move over here to the right side list, under those that are not like terms, you see some pairings like 8x and 7y. One has an x, one has a y, so those are not like terms. If we move down to the next one, you see that we have 5y and 2y squared. Those are also not like terms because the variable is not exactly the same. So the variables have to be identical, exactly the same, in order for them to be considered like terms. So let's look at some examples of combining like terms now. So on this first example here, we have 7y plus 6y. When you are adding together terms that are like terms, you are going to add or subtract their coefficients and then leave the variable the same. So in this case, that means we are going to add 7 plus 6. So we know that 7 plus 6 is going to give us 13. And then leave the variable the same. So the variable is going to stay y. That's it. Now those two terms are combined. If we move to the example in the middle of your screen, we have 3st minus st. So those are like terms. They both have the variable s and t. On this second one, 3st minus, and then we see just st. When you have that happen, you may remember from your middle school math classes that there's technically a coefficient of 1 here. So we are going to do the exact same thing that we did before. We're going to subtract, in this case, the coefficient. So 3 minus 1 is 2. And then we are going to leave the variable the same. So the variable is going to stay st. Moving over to the right side example here, we have negative 9w cubed minus 3w cubed. So again, they are like terms. So when we have negative 9 minus 3, you saw in last night's notes that if it helps you, you can change this to plus a negative 3. So negative 9 plus negative 3 would give us negative 12. And then again, we're going to leave the variable the same. So the variable is going to stay w cubed. Moving on to a couple more examples. In these couple down here, you're going to notice that we have 3 terms instead of 2. That doesn't really change anything about what we're doing as far as combining like terms. We still can only combine those terms that have the exact same variable. So in the case of this left side example, all 3 of these terms are like terms. So I would suggest that you only combine these 2 at a time to not overwhelm yourself, at least for now. So if I look at this, again, I have a situation where I have subtraction. So to keep my signs straight, it might help me to change this to plus and negative. So 2 plus a negative 6 is going to give us negative 4. Again, our variable is going to stay the same, so we're going to stay with AB. And then we are still going to have that plus 11AB that we see over here. So that piece did not do anything during the first round of this problem. Now we can take a look at combining these two terms that we have worked our way down to. They are again like terms because they both have the variable AB. So negative 4 plus 11 would give us positive 7. So our answer to this one is 7AB. And then our final example on this screen gives us three terms again. So we have negative k cubed, 4k cubed, and negative 7k cubed. So these are all like terms. Remember that this piece, when it looks like it has no coefficient, technically has a coefficient of 1. So we have negative 1 there. And again, if it helps us, we can change any subtraction sign into plus a negative to help us keep track of our signs. So we have, to start with, negative 1k cubed plus 4k cubed. Negative 1 plus 4 is going to give us 3. And then we have the variable still staying the same, so 3k cubed. And then plus, and that last part we didn't touch yet, so it's still plus a negative 7k cubed. So now when we go to combine these pieces, because again they are like terms, we're going to combine the coefficient. So 3 plus negative 7 should give us negative 4. And our variable again is going to stay the same. So our variable is still k cubed. And that would be your answer on that one. We're going to move to another set of examples now where not all of our terms are like terms. So we're going to have to pay a little closer attention to what we can and can't combine. So if you look at this first example, a couple of things to notice to start with. This first term looks like it doesn't have a coefficient, so we know that it technically has a coefficient of 1. And down here we have a subtraction sign, so we might go ahead and change that into plus a negative 6x to help us keep track of what we're doing. So when we are adding and subtracting, again, we can only add or subtract those terms that are like terms. So on this one, that would be the two terms that have an x in them. So this term here will combine with this term over here. But that 18 is not a like term, so it's just going to stay 18. So when I combine 1x plus negative 6x, 1 plus negative 6 is going to give me negative 5. And then again, my variable is going to stay the same, so my variable is going to stay x. And then I have that plus 18. That 18 did not find any like terms, so it's just going to stay the same. It's going to stay plus 18. So this here is your answer. These two do not combine, so don't force things to combine if they are not like terms. Moving over to this one here, as we look through, hopefully you notice that we have like terms in negative 9p to the 5th and positive 14p to the 5th. So those are going to be the two that I will be able to combine here. So I'm going to be able to combine this one with this one. That minus 1 on the end does not have anybody to combine with, so it's just going to stay as is. So when I combine these, negative 9 plus 14 gives us positive 5. Our variable again stays the same, so it's going to stay p to the 5th. And then you have that minus 1 that's just going to stay with us. Moving on to our final two examples here. So in our left side example here, as I look for like terms, I first may want to make some changes on signs to help me make sure that I'm combining things correctly. So I'm going to change this into plus a negative 12. And I can see that the two things that I have here that are like terms are my constant terms. So the terms without variables are called constant terms. So that's going to be this and this. So negative 12 plus 9, I can combine together. And when I combine those together, I am going to get negative 3. And then when I move on from there and look at what else I have left, these two terms do not combine. They have different variables. So this 8m here is positive. So when I put it back into my answer, I'm going to write it as plus. And then I also have that positive 3m squared. Now at this point in algebra, I'm not going to be concerned at all about the order of your terms. If you've taken Algebra 1 before, you probably know that eventually we'll reorder this, but for now I'm not consumed with that. If you want to practice that, that's fine, but it's not going to make a difference as far as the test goes. All right, last example here. So if we look at this one and we attempt to identify our like terms, we are going to notice that we have two terms that have the same variable c. So negative 5c and positive 10c are going to be our like terms. Negative 5 plus 10 gives us positive 5. So we have that 5. Our variable stays the same, so that's going to stay c. And then these other two terms are not like terms, and they don't have anybody to combine with. So it's just going to stay plus 2d. And then I'm going to have that minus 13. All right, so that wraps up your lesson on combining like terms. Make sure that you have your notes for class tomorrow.